Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, it's August 22nd, 2020. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, entitled Scheduled Incarnations with Specific Functions. We are in text 26. I'm here with Bhakti Keith and Bhakti Leia. Earlier I saw Ramachandra and Bhakti Brielle. Here they are. I see some of them. And they're at the Bhakti Yoga Retreat. There's Malini and Narayan and Bhakti Eze. Online I see Daru Brahma and Drew, Dominique, Gaetano, George, Laura. They're in St. Petersburg, Florida. Rukmini and Ladini and Christina. They're in the Czech Republic. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol. Okay, so text 26, chapter 7, canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhume Sura Itara Varuta Vimarditaya Klesha Vyayaya Kalaya Sita Krishna Kesha Jata Karishyati Jana Anupalaksha Marga Karmani Cha Atma Mahima Upani Bandhanani Bhume Suretara Varuta Vimarditaya Klesha Vyayaya Kalaya Sita Krishna Kesha Jata Karishyati Jamuna Palakshamarga Karmani Chatma Mahimo Panibandhanani Ume Suretara Varuta Vimarditaya Klesha Vyayaya Kalaya Sita Krishna Kesha Jata Karishyati Jananu Palakshamarga Karmani Chatma Mahimo Panibandhanani Ume Suretara Varuta Vimarditaya Klesha Vyayaya Kalaya Sita Krishna Kesha Jata Karishyati Jananu Palakshamarga Karmani Chatma Mahimo Panibandhanani
Bhume Sureta Varuta Vimadrityatiya
Ume Suretara Varuta Vimarditaya
Klesha Vyayaya Kalaya Sita Krishna Kesha
Klesha Vyayaya Kalaya Sita Krishna Kesha
Jata Karishtayati Janu Nupakshamarga
Jata Karishyati Yati jananupalakshya marga.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Ume sureta varuta vimargati tatapikaya.
Ume suretara varuta vimarditaya.
Klesha vyaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Klesha vyaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Jata karishati jana nupalaksha marga.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Karmani chatma mahimopani panda hanani.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Ume shureta virota vimaditatya.
Ume suretara varuta vimarditaya.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Jata karishati jananupalakshya marga.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Dharmani chatmahi mopani bandhanani.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Bhume suretara varuta vimaditaya.
Bhume suretara varuta vimarditaya.
Kesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Bhume suretara varuta vimarditaya.
Bhume suretara varuta vimaditaya.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Bhume suvita lavahuta vimaditaya.
Bhume suretara varuta vimaditaya.
Kesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Kamani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Karmani chatma mahimopani bandhanani.
Bhume suretara varuta vimarditaya.
Bhume suretara varuta vimaditaya.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Jata karishyati jananupalakshya marga.
Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani.
Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani.
Thank you. So we'll go to the word for word now. This is Canto 2, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 7, Text 26. Bhume,
Bhume,
of the entire world.
of the entire world.
Sura Itara,
Sura Itara,
other than godly persons.
other than godly persons.
Varuta,
Varuta,
soldiers.
soldiers.
Vimaraditaya,
Vimaraditaya,
distressed by the burden.
distressed by the burden.
Klesha,
Klesha,
miseries.
miseries.
Vyayaya,
Yaya,
for the matter of diminishing.
for the matter of diminishing.
Kalaya,
Kalaya,
along with his plenary expansion.
along with his plenary extensions.
Sita Krishna,
Sita Krishna,
not only beautiful, but also black.
not only beautiful, but also black.
Kesha,
Kesha,
with such hairs.
with such hairs.
Jata,
Jata,
having appeared.
having appeared.
Karishyati,
Karishati,
would act. Jana,
Jana,
people in general.
people in general.
Anupalaksha,
Anupalaksha,
rarely to be seen.
rarely seen.
Marga,
Marga,
path.
Path,
Karmani,
Karmani,
activities.
activities.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Atma Mahima,
Atmanahima,
glories of the Lord himself.
glories of the Lord himself.
Upani Bandhanani,
Panibandhanani,
in relation to.
in relation to.
Translation. When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form with beautiful black hair. And just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great he is. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This verse is especially describing the appearance of Lord Krishna and his immediate expansion, Lord Baladev. Both Lord Krishna and Lord Baladev are one supreme personality of Godhead. The Lord is omnipotent, and he expands himself in innumerable forms and energies, and the whole unit is known as the one supreme Brahman. Such extensions of the Lord are divided into two divisions, namely personal and differential. The personal expansions are called the Vishnu Tattvas, and the differential expansions are called the Jiva Tattvas. And in such expansional activity, Lord Baladev is the first personal expansion of Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead. In the Vishnu Purana as well as in the Mahabharata, both Krishna and Baladev are mentioned as having beautiful black hair, even in their advanced age. The Lord is called Anupalaksha Marga, or in still more technical Vedic terms, Avan Manasa Gochara, one who is never to be seen or realized by the limited sense perception of the people in general. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 25, it is said by the Lord, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yogamaya Samavrita. In other words, he reserves the right of not being exposed to anyone and everyone. Only the bona fide devotees can know him by his specific symptoms. And out of many, many such symptoms, one symptom is mentioned here in this verse, that the Lord is Sita Krishna Kesha, or one who is observed always with beautiful black hair. Both Lord Krishna and Lord Baladev have such hair on their heads, and thus even in advanced age, they appeared like young boys 16 years old. That is the particular symptom of the personality of Godhead. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that although he is the oldest personality among all living entities, he always looks like a new youthful boy. That is the characteristic of a spiritual body. The material body is symptomized by birth, death, old age, and diseases. but the spiritual body is conspicuous by the absence of those symptoms. Living entities who reside in the Vaikuntha lokas in eternal life and bliss have the same type of spiritual body without being affected by any signs of old age. It is described in the Bhagavatam, Canto 6, that the party of Vishnu Dutas who came to deliver Ajamil from the clutches of the party of Yamaraj appeared like youthful boys, corroborating the description in this verse. It is ascertained thus that the spiritual bodies in the Vaikuntha lokas, either of the Lord or of the other inhabitants, are completely distinct from the material bodies of this world. Therefore, when the Lord descends from that world to this world, he descends in his spiritual body of Atma Maya, or internal potency, without any touch of the Bahiranga Maya, or external material energy. The allegation that the impersonal Brahman appears in this material world by accepting a material body is quite absurd. Therefore, the Lord, when he comes here, has not a material body, but a spiritual body. The impersonal Brahmagyoti is only the glaring effulgence of the body of the Lord, and there is no difference in quality between the body of the Lord and the impersonal ray of the Lord, called Brahmagyoti. Now the question is why the Lord, who is omnipotent, comes here to diminish the burden created upon the world by the unscrupulous kingly order. Certainly the Lord does not need to come here personally for such purposes, but he actually descends to exhibit his transcendental activities in order to encourage his pure devotees who want to enjoy life by chanting the glories of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:13 and 14, it is stated that the Mahatmas, great devotees of the Lord, take pleasure in chanting of the activities of the Lord. All Vedic literatures are meant for turning one's attention towards the Lord and his transcendental activities. Thus, the activities of the Lord and his dealings with worldly people create a subject matter for discussion by his pure devotees. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayampakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatanditam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamstra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchikalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vainam Namaskricha Naram Chavinarotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tatojamudhirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one must first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesh vabhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Text 26, chapter 7, canto 2, Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhume suretara bharuta vimarditaya klesha vyayaya kalayasita krishna kesha jata karishyati jananu palaksha marga karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani. when the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form with beautiful black hair, and just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great he is. Hare Krishna. So this is Lord Brahma speaking to his son and disciple Narada Muni. And in this, as the title of the chapter says, scheduled incarnation with specific functions, Lord Brahma is describing about 24, maybe 25 or 30 avatars, incarnations of God. And generally he's giving like one verse, he's giving us a brief summary in one verse. For Lord Ramachandra, just before this, he described in 3 verses. And now he's talking about Krishna and Balaram. And now he's going to describe Krishna in 10 verses, like many verses. And this is consistent with Lord Brahma's prayers. Govinda Madi Pusham Tamaham Bhajame. Worship Krishna, Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor. So in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3 is very similar to this, second canto, chapter 7. Chapter 3 is also about 24 incarnations. And that chapter towards the end says, Ete Chamsakla Pumsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam. And Krishna is the Svayam Bhagavan. He's the source of all the incarnations, all the avatars, including the Vishnus. So as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Hamadiri Devanam Maharshinam Chasarvasha, that Krishna says, I'm not another demigod or sage. I'm the source of the demigods and the sages. So Krishna's position, Krishna's tattva is special. Yea, Krishna tattva Veda, say Guru Hai. So it's described in the Vedas. Guru means one who knows Krishna tattva. Knowing Krishna tattva is, as is described in Bhagavad Gita, one who knows Krishna is to be understood as the knower of everything. Okay, so that includes all the other tattvas, including about Brahman and Paramatma. Brahman, the non-personal realization. It's what we give it. Prabhupada gives the example, like if we're driving and then in the distance there's like a hill or a mountain, kind of on the top of the mountain, we sort of notice there's maybe some town or city there. It's fuzzy, it's indistinct. So it's not that the Brahma Jyoti is indistinct, but it means like one with Brahman realization without Bhagavan or Paramatma realization. The vision of the Absolute is kind of fuzzy and indistinct. It's all merged into one. And as we get closer and we drive up, we see, oh, it's not just some cloud on the hill and some fuzziness. No, there's buildings there, and there's the sports fields, and we can see there's distinction. There's distinction. And as we get closer and closer and we drive up to it, we see, it's very personal. Oh, there's John Smith, and and there's the grocery store, and it becomes very personal, very intimate. So that's a metaphor for Brahman realization, Paramatma realization, and Bhagavan realization. And Krishna's Svayam Bhagavan. He's the supreme personality of Godhead. So Brahma, in his affection for Krishna and his devotion for Krishna, he's giving really in these next 10 verses or so, a brief summary of the whole 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. All the other cantos of Bhagavatam, including this one, the second canto, which is the cosmic creation, all the other topics, they're meant to serve the 10th canto, the Summum Bonum, the pastimes of Krishna in 90 chapters. All the other topics and philosophies and about the Manus and about the nature of the Jiva and matter and creation and dissolution, it's all meant to bring us to the pastimes of Krishna. And so in these next verses, which we'll read over the days, maybe weeks to come, Brahma is giving a summary of that 10th canto and the pastimes of Krishna with the Kaliya snake and Mother Yashoda. And then this whole concept of pastimes of God, I know myself, if I look at my upraising and conditioning growing up, and maybe it's true for most everyone here, if not everyone here, the idea of like the pastimes of God. So, it was the idea as well. Yes, so God is a baby who steals butter, and then his mother chases him. What? And beautiful black hair, and he's dancing with girls, and so just like this is like quite far. It's just like that, and so because the conception we get in the, let's call it Western, Mid-Eastern origin, you get, God kind of like old man with a beard in the sky, struggling with arthritis and that sort of thing. And
He's got a very stern finger, though.
Stern finger, yeah, he's serious and like that. Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel. Okay. And then like as ages went on, kind of like a lot of intellectuals, people who have, the scientific method, kind of like, this isn't really satisfying for the intellect. So then the ideas became more and more prominent that, like ultimately God it's like a force. It's like a force, it's an energy, it's the oneness of everything. Because in the idea of personalism, the idea is like, that's childish primitive mythology, this whole personalism thing. And so then God becomes a force, or there is no spirit, everything is matter, and ideas like that evolved or devolved, became more and more popular, with the Enlightenment and things like that. And so this is like a purport of the purport here is like that. So this is a different conception because, it's the common term, anthropomorphism, right? That, we're just imagining some, father figure in the sky because we want a father figure. And so we, like that. And so, because we have some need. Of course, this argument of need is interesting because it's assumed like just you have some psychological need, it's not real. But actually, if we look at needs, like on the physical platform, we need water. And if we look at the world, we'll find water exists. We need air. We find air exists. So just because there is a need doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay. In fact, it might indicate that it does exist. So that's something to consider. So the idea is like, the idea of a personal God is just anthropomorphic, like that. But what's presented here is the idea of rejecting the personality of Godhead, the form of Godhead, is anthropomorphic, right? Because the idea is, if God has a form and a personality and dancing and playing the flute and friendship, then it would be like my dancing and form and personality, or my friends or something like that. It would be like it, because that's the conception we have. That's the conception we have. So we go, but we're, we got all these defects and disturbances and major shortcomings and like that. So God couldn't be like that. So therefore we reject the possibility of the personality of Godhead based on an anthropomorphic conception of what personality, form, activity must be like. So we say, if there is a God, it must be radical, undifferentiated oneness with no variety, no distinction. How boring. Yeah. So this is This is a different paradigm. It's the paradigm of transcendence. It's a paradigm of that which is transcognitive, trans-rational, not irrational, not neglecting cognition. That this is transcendental form made of eternity, bliss, knowledge. Just like, okay, we understand we're not this body, we're spiritual beings. This body is like a vehicle, okay? And so, there's so many logical arguments and experiential experiences to indicate, yes, I'm not this body, I'm some non-physical being. All right. So then there's this whole world related to the body. There's this whole world of matter, like this body is matter. Okay, and so I'm going to say it makes sense that there must be a whole world related to the non-physical nature. There must be a whole world related to the non-physical nature. So that's the transcendental world, the trans-phenomenal, trans-empirical world. And this whole process of bhakti yoga is meant to it's described, Diksha is described as it's a transformational process to transform our absorption, to transform our consciousness from the world of matter to that trans-phenomenal world of spiritual form. So I would say the world of spirit, but then that implies, at least from my conditioning, oh yes, the world of the oneness of energy. The oneness of energy, that's included in spiritual form, spiritual relationships, spiritual qualities, spiritual activity, spiritual speaking. Okay, so everything, just like if someone's in a virtual reality or video game, so that's a whole world in there, and that represents the material world, and we get absorbed. That's what makes it fun. If we're at a movie, we get absorbed in the movie. We get absorbed in the virtual reality game. But then it's kind of like, okay, if you disconnect from the virtual reality, then there's just undifferentiated oneness with no distinction. No, disconnect from the virtual reality, then you got real trees and real people and real relationship, not just the movie version, not just the digital version. So many analogies, okay, there's a dream world. In dream, there's form and there's activity and there's fear and there's love and there's a whole world in the dream, right? And there's people, okay. But then, okay, but now when I wake up, now it's just energy with no distinction. No, now when I wake up, I wake up to my real life. So similarly, this is the dream life, this is virtual reality, and bhakti yoga is about transforming our consciousness to the real life of the soul, real form, real personality, real relationships, real flutes and rivers and like that. Okay. And so, Prabhupada references a verse here. Advaitama chuttamanadi mananto pammadhyam puran pusham navayovanam cha vedeshu durlabam atma bhakta govinda mari pusham
We're in the intermission of the morning program while Dhira Govinda Prabhu reconnects his internet and comes back. You can use this time to take care of your bodily needs or do some extra chanting or whatever you'd like. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, we're back. As you see, I'm having some internet challenges here, our home temple here. So, Vedeshu Durlabham Durlabham Atma Bhakta, which says that Krishna, Govinda, Primanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Shanta Sadeva Ridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundara Machintya Gunasvarupam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Lord Brahma says, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shama Sundar, Krishna himself, possessing innumerable transcendental attributes like beautiful black hair, and whom the pure devotees worship in their heart of hearts with the eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So Vedeshu Durlabham Durlabham Bhakta, what that says is through scholarship alone, studying the Vedas alone, we're not going to enter into the transcendental realm. We talked in a recent class. Bhakti is self-revealing. Krishna is self-revealing. Srimad Bhagavatam is self-revealing. And we enter into Srimad Bhagavatam, we enter into the pastimes of Krishna with a spirit of devotion. I want to serve you. Then we enter into the pastimes. And so by scholarship, because like in modern academics, it's because the idea is, well, to know the Vedas, well, you need to be objective. You need to be objective. Because if you're actually practicing it, well, then you don't have the objectivity. But it's kind of like if we go to a doctor, if we go to a doctor and the doctor says, okay, so here's the medicine, here's the diet, and you follow this, and then you'll become healthy and like that. And you go, well, I'll take the medicine according to what I want, and I'll follow the diet. Okay, well, so the doctors get. So similarly, it's like we say, I want to know the Vedas, and the Vedas say, here's how you can know the Vedas. And we go, nah, I'm going to know the Vedas some other way. Okay, well then we're rejecting the doctor. The Vedas say, here's how you can know me. Krishna says, Bhakti Mam Abhijanati Avanyashtasmitavata Tatumam Tatvidogyafa Pishateta Nantaram. Krishna says, only by devotion can I be known as I am. He doesn't say, Gatva Mam or Yogi Mam. He says, only by bhakti, only by devotion. Prabhupada actually, he in this analogy, he specifically quotes his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta, that Bhaktisiddhanta used the analogy of like, if there's a jar of honey, we can study, we can analyze. I think the honey tastes like this. No, I think it tastes like that. Well, based on its color, we can analyze. But Bhaktisiddhanta says, okay, if we want to know the taste of honey, we need to open the jar. And so opening the jar to get these pastimes, to get what that means that God has beautiful black hair. What these pastimes are, Krishna's quality, the nature of the person of Godhead, it means to serve with love and devotion, to enter in to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, with a spirit of, how can I serve you? How can I please you? Very personal, very loving. And say, well, I don't feel loving. I'm far from loving. Okay, well then we're practicing. We're practicing, and we're following Srila Prabhupada, who knows how to serve Krishna with love. He's a master. That's what I mean, spiritual master. Yea, Krishna Tattva Se Guru Haya. So this is the key to open the jar of honey. This is the key, and this is how we know these pastimes described by Lord Brahma. Now, part of our devotion is to develop some scholarship, to study the books. Let's learn the philosophy. Let's learn how to explain the philosophy. So that's scholarship driven by devotion, not disconnected from it. So Vedeshu Durlabham Durlabham Atma Bhakta. And then in the purport, Prabhupada, describes some key pillars of what that devotion looks like. He quotes, it's described, Machita, Matgata, Prana, Bodhiantas Praspram, Katentas Chamam Nicham, Prashanticha, Ramanticha. Krishna, in one of the seed verses of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he says, my devotees, their hearts are absorbed in me, their thoughts are absorbed in me, and they derive great fulfillment, pleasure, bliss, satisfaction by conversing about me and enlightening one another about me. And so we associate intimately and enthusiastically and joyfully with other aspiring followers of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, and we talk about Krishna, we talk about Srimad Bhagavatam, and then our devotion naturally awakens. Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sajjaka Bhunoy Shravanadi Shuddhachite Karya Udai. Love of Krishna is naturally within the heart of all living entities. It's not something to be gotten from some external source, and it's awakened by this Shravanam Kirtanam. Prabhupada references the verse. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dvidavrataha namasyantascha mam nityam nityayukta upasate. Bhagavad Gita verse that talks about kirtan, satatam kirtayanto mam, that the devotees of Krishna engaging in kirtan, when always Nityayukta upasate. Actually said that verse has always, steadily, Satatam Kirtyantumam Yatantas Chadridavrata Namasyantas Chamam Nityam, always, eternally. Nityayuktam upasate. And Yatantas Chadridavrata. So Krishna says, my devotees, they're hearing about me, they're chanting about, doing Satatam Kirtayantumam, they're always, Satatam Nitya, always doing kirtan. Of course, kirtan can take different forms. If we're talking Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada said that's kirtan. Kirtan doesn't need to be the singing. I mean, that's definitely a form of kirtan. And Krishna says Yatam Tascha Dritavrata means with a vow. Right? So Krishna is talking about someone who's serious to perfect their life. Just like tomorrow will be a ceremony of formal initiation. Hare Krishna. And so it's a time to formalize one's vow to one's spiritual master. So that's completely aligned with Bhagavad Gita. Drita vrata, with a vow, drita. I wouldn't be surprised if the English word determination comes from the Sanskrit drita. And vrata, I wouldn't be surprised if the English word vow comes from vrata. So with a vow of determination, do kirtan in whatever forms we're guided by our spiritual master. There's a lot here in this purport. We hardly talked at all about Krishna and Balaram and their beautiful black hair. So this verse specifically, Prabhupada makes it, this verse is about Krishna and Balaram. And the whole science of incarnations, it has its complexity. And to say one thing, we know that Balaram's Krishna's first expansion. Yeah, it's like, so that's technically first expansion, like that. Yeah. We could say Balaram's an incarnation, but expansion is technically more correct. Okay, I'll read the verse again. Bhume suretura varuta vimarditaya klesha vyayaya kalaya Sita Krishna Kesha Jata Karishati Jananu Palakshamarga Karmani Chatma Mahimo Paniban Hadani. When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form with beautiful black hair, and just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great he is. Hare Krishna, thanks for your presence and attention and devotion. And I welcome any comments or questions. Brielle.
Baladev is Balaram?
Yeah, Baladev and Balaram, that's synonymous.
Okay. Thank you for the class. I appreciated you mentioning anthropomorphism because I'm starting to see that word in the books that I'm reading from
Yeah.
my storytelling
Yeah.
grad program. And I imagine I'm going to be coming across it a lot more. So it's helpful to have like the alternative, like the argument that you posed makes a lot of sense.
So that's like helpful in your pursuits, in your studies.
Yeah, because I recognize I'm like, my endeavor to go to this program is so much, it's very intuitive. I like almost can't say why. But I think it's going to help like my spiritual life, my career, but there's also this dangerous edge where it's like this world of myth and story is very enchanting and it looks as stories like honestly the program I'm going to seems to look at stories from the realm of like valuing this other world of spirituality.
Yes.
And not thinking it's like garbage or anything like that. But still I think there's like just the fact that this book was using the word anthropomorphism that I was just reading, like it's possible I'm going to come across that. So I appreciate hearing your argument. But my question is unrelated. My question is something related also to what I'm reading in this book. This book was talking about the complementarity of worlds, like
Yes.
how there's this material world and then there's like the other world or the spiritual world.
Yeah.
And the book was proposing that like what myth helps us see is the complementarity of the world rather than one being better than the other. But then so much of what Prabhupada gives is like the material world sucks, get out of it, as if it's like less than. But then I'm curious to like look at this from the realm of like, well, it seems like almost we need the material world to help us go back to God or something like that. But then it's like we fall away from God, and that's why the material world was created. So I guess I was wondering what you think about, is it really that like this world is like, okay, it's like, yes, it's inferior, but like also it's like seems to be needed or necessary. So yeah, I was wondering if you could speak about that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing, Brielle. Hare Krishna. Yes. All right. Yeah. So I appreciate your spirit of looking to bring essence of Bhagavatam, that consciousness into your studies, and you're aware that that there's risks there. You could become distracted and bewildered from your spiritual life because it's attractive, it's intellectual mythology and stories, and you could be so like you're going there with like some appropriate cautions and boundaries, and so you're drawn there. You know, it's like you're meant to go there, and you're endeavoring to like cultivate your spiritual consciousness, your Krishna consciousness, and bring it in there in an intelligent way. Yeah, like you won't look like a preacher, but in an intelligent way. In like a pin, out like a plow. Yeah. And and so yeah, I mean, so like to the extent that one is clean and involved in consciousness, distinctions between material and spiritual disappear. We don't want to disappear them artificially, because it's all the energy of God.
Yeah.
It's all the energy of God.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, this world is terrible, let's get out of here. Yeah, because okay, what we call matter, it's an energy of Krishna that because of our desires to want to try to enjoy separately from God, it's an energy of Krishna that alienates the self from the self. So the hierarchy, the judgment, it's based on that. And it's based on really like, is it moving us closer to the bliss of self-realization or further away? And so so that which moves us further away, we can call it inferior or not, but it's just that kind of like an intelligent person who wants happiness will like, yeah, okay, let me stay away from that. At the same time, to the extent that one there in the sixth canto of Bhagavatam, there's a purport where Prabhupada clearly writes, I know you're familiar with this, one who sees everything as Maya rather than seeing everything as Krishna is an offender,
Yeah.
right? So kind of like, oh, you went to that movie? Oh, that's Maya, Prabhu. Oh, you did this, you did that. Like that book is mundane, it's material. Well, the movie, the book, it's all Krishna's energy. It's all Krishna's energy. Now we should approach with caution, because there might be forms of Krishna's energy that if I approach it, that I will get more and more distanced from myself, alienated from self-realization. But it's, in a sense, it's not because it's Maya, but I'm in Maya, means I'm not seeing the connection of Krishna's energy with Krishna. And as we advance more and more and become less and less attached to enjoying matter, as we advance more and more, then we do realize the connection of the book, the movie, and everything with its original source, with Krishna. Not just realize the connection, but realize how to relate to all of Krishna's energies in a way that's conducive and energizing for everyone's self-realization and God consciousness. We don't want to artificially pretend we're there, right? Oh yeah, I see it's all Krishna, and I could get lost in a library and just get this way, and I just get more bewildered. But at least in principle, we see like the example of Srila Prabhupada. He came to the world of Maya from Vrindavan. He came to the West, but he was seeing like all these skyscrapers, they're Krishnas. How can we use them for Krishna? And he was seeing like all the arts, all the sciences, this is all Krishna's energy. All these people engaged in all these habits, meat-eating habits and drug habits, the hippies, the LSD culture. Yeah, these are all devotees of Krishna. And so the osmosis completely went from his pure devotion to everyone else. So we don't want to imitate that, but we want to follow that principle.
Okay, that's insightful. And what do you, like, I'm curious what you have to say about like the complementarity of the worlds.
Complementary?
Yeah, like them being complementary to one another.
What's your understanding of complementariness?
Like that each world serves the other world in some way, in some capacity. That it's not that like one takes away from the other, or that one is better than the other, but that they serve one another.
Of course they serve one another. That okay, so this world, in case someone hasn't noticed, this world is full of disturbances. Okay, disturbances. We have one course where we categorize those disturbances into 16 categories, but generally 3 categories: disturbances from the mind, the body, disturbances from other living entities, disturbances from nature, disturbances from disease, that's big in the world now, disturbances from birth, death, old age, disturbances from the cheating propensity, disturbances from birth, death, old age, disease, from eating, sleeping, mating, defending. It's full of disturbances, right? So that's so complementary with the spiritual world, because like, okay, so I get, as long as I'm I'll be happy when I fix the disturbances. When he or she just starts being a completely different person, then I'll be fulfilled and happy and peaceful. I'm sure that's going to happen tomorrow. That shouldn't be a problem. And as soon as the pandemic is this, so then we have an experience of misery and frustration and suffering and pain, and we can joke about it, but sometimes it's like suicidal pain. And it's like there's a lot of so like that, and it's not the fault of the material energy. It's just because I've got this. I'm going to get that carrot, but the stick it's always 2 feet away, right? So okay, let me be intelligent. Let me wake up. Let me respond to the material context. Let me respond to the material context in such a way where I deepen my determination. To serve and be dependent only on that which is eternal, only in that which will never be crushed by time. That's the joy. And that way, all the disturbances, I offer them my respectful obeisances. They are my guru. They are complementing my spiritual life. As the more and more I train myself to relate and respond to the disturbances of the material context with the spirit of being the kitten in the jaws of mother cat, rather than being the mouse in the jaws of mother cat, then not, oh death, oh pandemic, this relationship is not going the way I want, all the disturbances, I just need to fix them, then I'll be happy. That's like the rat in the jaws of the cat.
Thank you. So see the complementarity, and I wonder if you would agree in that, like, so that's how, like, yeah, the complementarity in, like, I think I've read that, like, Krishna wants this, like, Krishna doesn't get to enjoy, like, certain moods in the spiritual world. Like, here he can enjoy, like, the fighting mood.
Yes.
Like being inimical towards someone.
Yes.
And so, like, that seems like another way where there's, like, a complementarity.
Yeah. Yeah. In a sense, the material realm is also Krishna's pastime.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he gets to enjoy in particular ways here. In a sense, when we're in alienated virtual reality material consciousness, we're also part of Krishna's pastime.
Yeah.
But through his external energy. And that's a different quality of pastime than if we choose to serve him, choose to dedicate our lives to please him, then we enter into the pastimes of the internal energy.
But even like, what was it, is it Jagai and Madai? That, like, they got, these two people had a choice either whether to be born, like,
Jai and Vijay.
Jai and Vijay had a choice, like, they could have 3 lives as Krishna's enemy, or like 7 as Krishna's friend or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so Krishna does special things in the material realm that, from my understanding, he doesn't do in the Vaikuntha planets. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So in that case, is it like Jai and Vijay are like serving Krishna, like in the inferior energy, or is that like, I don't know how to interpret that.
Yes. Okay. So Jai and Vijay, they came down as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and as Ramachandra and Kumbhakarna, and then the next birth was it? Ravana. Yes. Yeah. Right. and then Shishupal and Dantavakra, and then Jagai and Madai. Right. And so then they're part of Krishna's pastimes in the material realm. Of course, when Krishna is enacting his pastimes in the material realm, whether it's Ramachandra, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, Nrsimhadev, then in a sense he's bringing Vaikuntha here. It becomes like an embassy. And Jai and Vijay, that's a bit complex. In a sense, they fell into material consciousness. In another sense, they never forgot Vishnu.
Yeah, they chose that out of devotion to Krishna. Like, they wanted less lives in the material world so that they could be back with Krishna quicker.
Yes.
So it's like the choice was out of devotion, but then they fell under like temporary illusion to serve the purpose.
That was part of the
Hating
pastime.
Krishna as enemy.
Yes.
It's interesting. So interesting.
Yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Malini.
I was thinking of Briel's question about complementarity, and how, it's easy to understand how, the spiritual is complementary to the material. In fact, the material doesn't exist without the spiritual. So I was thinking, like, without the material world and spiritual world, is not going to exist purely because of the free will of our living entities. And the spiritual world to exist purely, it kind of need the material world for whatever is not pure, the consciousness of the living entities as a place to be. So that's another way also it's complementary.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Brielle said that's very helpful. That's very helpful.
Yeah. And I was thinking of other parts of the discussion, like it seems that there is distinction that Srila Prabhupada makes between the material energies, material nature, and the material world. Like when he describes the 5 material elements and with 5 gross material elements and the 3 subtle material elements, it sees its energy, and so that is material nature. And then there is a material world that's full of misery. But it's not the material nature that's full of misery in itself. The material world is full of misery because of the consciousness we bring to it. Because as you said, like if we use the material nature and the material energy for another purpose than self-realization, then that becomes a material world.
Yeah.
Those distinctions, I think it's really like
Yes.
them again and again, and to really understand the 8 material elements, the 5 gross and the 3 subtle elements. They are not the material world, they are the material nature, the material energy. Yeah.
Thanks for that distinction. Thanks for that distinction. Very much. Yeah. Thank you, Melanie. And
So,
Brielle.
I want to summarize that, and she's saying like material nature is not intrinsically like disconnecting from Krishna. It's like the energy wanting to lord it over material nature that is the disconnection. Creates the disconnection.
Melanie, did you hear Brielle?
Yeah, it's another way. It's another way to say the same thing. The material energy is Mama Maya. It's an energy of the Lord, like you said, and so there is a material nature, material energy, and then a material world, and the material. It's not all the same. And the material world is anything that we see separated from Krishna, like you said earlier, or like we have said now. Like when we want to load over the material energy, then that's when we create the material world, not the material energy itself, or not the material nature itself.
Thanks for that. Okay, because like this house or the car outside, it's made of the material elements. At the same time, if I'm saying, okay, let me use this house to discuss Bhagavatam, let me use the car to go to a kirtan program to glorify Krishna, then it's made of material elements, but it's no longer part of the material world. It's no longer part of the material world, right? Thank you. And then, the more we cultivate sattvic habits and consciousness, then the more we begin to become we begin to become freed from the illusion of Maya consciousness and transcendental consciousness. Then we're living in the eternal spiritual world, transcendental consciousness. Thanks for that.
Yeah. And the question, I have that question recurrently, but about the verse said that Krishna comes to alleviate the burden of the military strength on earth and the sinful activities. But really now it's so much more than probably it was 5,000 years ago when there was a lot more sattva. And then Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he said, well, the Lord doesn't need to do that. We can see that he can send a little virus and that's enough to kill all the demons and to kill everybody. Not only the demons, the devotees too. Like in the battlefield Kurukshetra, where not only the demons were killed, but everybody else was killed too. And and so Prabhupada said it's really to perform his pastimes, to be seen by his devotees. I was just looking at, it seems that when Lord Chaitanya came, then he didn't take that part. He didn't take that part of Krishna's appearance on earth, of destroying the military strengths, destroying the world. He did that 5,000 years ago, but not 500 years ago. And then now we are in the same place that Krishna is using his external energy when he needs to, and he's not descending for that in order to kill the miscreants and kill, diminish military strength on earth.
Yeah, it seems Krishna takes different forms and acts in different ways, serving the same principle of yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata bhutanam dharmasya tadatmanam shujamyaham paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya chatushkritam dharmasam stapanartaya sambhavami yuge to annihilate the miscreants and please the devotees. Right. So you say, okay, well, right now the military government it's the corruption is so much greater than 5,000 years ago. So like Krishna, any time now would be fine, like okay, we're waiting, like that. So he's doing it in different forms, he's doing it in different forms. Like so maybe he's not now he's doing it through mass sankirtan. Yes, and kirtana prayer. He's doing it through. He's doing it through his Shaktivesh Avatar Srila Prabhupada, and we get to participate. We get to participate in diminishing the distress of the world. We get to participate in that. We get to the extent that we give ourselves to the Sankirtan mission, then we're participating, just as Arjuna participated. So yeah, I mean, Krishna is doing it in different form, but I see it's essentially the same. And now he's doing it through the Sankirtan movement, through Shaktivesh Avatar Srila Prabhupada, the Panchatattva. He's doing it through the Bhagavatam. And we get to be part of that diminishing the distress of the world to the extent we choose.
Yes, thank you. And again, that's diminishing the burden of the world. And also, Prabhupada said the purport is doing it with external energy.
Yeah.
Like a tsunami, or,
Yeah.
Is, in so many ways.
So many ways.
And he didn't need, even 5,000 years ago, he didn't need to come to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for your participation. Yes, Bhaktin Dominique.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class. I was curious about Balaram and Srimati Radharani. So Balaram isn't really he was eternal. It's like an eternal expansion. But they call him the first expansion. He's considered the first expansion.
Yes, yeah, and that because first that means there was a time when he didn't exist. So again, this gets to I'll call it the trans-rational, the achintya. Achintya means inconceivable, but achintya, like achintya beta tattva, but inconceivable achintya doesn't mean we can't understand it. But through devotion, we can understand, not through mundane mind. So just like, the example is there, like this is a mundane example to maybe help us get a glimpse into, of course, Balaram's eternal and Radharani is eternal. and they're expansions of Krishna. So just like there's never a time when the sun exists without sun rays, right? There's never a time when the sun exists without sun rays. Still, it's true to say the sun rays emanate from the sun. The sun rays are an expansion of the sun, and the sun is the source. The sun is the source, and an expansion are the sun rays. And simultaneously, there was never a time when the sun existed without sun rays. So that's like, it's a metaphor to help us understand, yes, Krishna is the source of incarnations, and each incarnation is eternal. And he's the source of all of the expansions. He's the source of the gopis and Balaram and like that. And they're all eternal. There was never a point in time when they did not exist. It's the same with the jiva souls.
So Radharani is an expansion.
Yeah. Radharani is Srimati Radharani, and her appearance day is coming up in 3 days. Radhastami. Radharani is Shakti Tattva. She's energetic expansion of the Ladini Shakti, the pleasure potency of Krishna. She is Ladini Shakti. Yeah.
Okay. How many different tattvas are there?
How many different tattvas?
Shakti tattva, Vishnu tattva, Jiva? I don't know.
You're good. Well, okay. So how many different tattvas? It depends who you ask. What I mean is, like, there's the basic teachings, and then if we go into it more, it gets more and more nuanced. So basically there's, okay, generally sometimes we'll just do, there's Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva. So it means there's God and the living entity. And sometimes that's basically it, okay? Sometimes that's what we'll hear. Go into it more, actually Jiva Tattva is a subset of Shakti Tattva. And Srimati Radharani, because Jiva Tattva means to give pleasure to Vishnu Tattva. So Radharani is the source of that. You see, like that. So, but Radharani is not Jiva Tattva. So Jiva Tattva is a subset of Shakti Tattva. Okay. Then you can get into Shiva Tattva. Shiva Tattva isn't quite, he's like yogurt. You probably know that analogy. Okay. Kshiram yata dadaivikara vishesha yoga. So, okay, then there's Shiva Tattva. And then, okay, so then, and then if we get into some of the more esoteric parts of Prabhupada's purport, sometimes he talks about the Sri Sampradaya, and they talk about 16 types of energies, which don't seem to neatly fit into the definitions we have in Gaudiya theology. So it gets complex, like that. So sometimes Jiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva. Okay, but then there's material energy. Okay, so that's Bahiranga Shakti. I think that's described here. The external energy, and the marginal energy, and the internal energy. So there's different ways to categorize it. So there's the basic teachings, and then there's more and more nuance depending how much we want to get into it.
So, but the way Krishna likes to have his pastimes unfold, he experiences a first expansion of Balaram. So Radharani isn't not like before that or after that. It's just like a separate pastime, or is there like a is there like a story to how he likes to unfold those relationships of like expanding?
It's interesting. It would be an interesting side to look at the language Prabhupada uses when he describes like Srimati Radharani, the Ladini Shakti, and how that compares to the language he uses when he describes Balaram. And so that would be an interesting research. It's important. There was never a time when any of these relationships didn't exist, right? This is all outside of material time. It's all outside of material time. So Balaram's Vishnu Tattva, and Radharani is the chief Shakti Tattva.
And generally, Prabhupada suggests when we're chanting the second half of the Maha Mantra, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, that we like meditate on Balaram. General guidance.
Have you seen something like that from Srila Prabhupada?
No, I heard it from a devotee.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen something like that. I mean, there's Prabhupada, he definitely discussed this. He said there was arguments between his disciples that the Rama in the Maha Mantra, some said it refers to Balaram, and some said it refers to Lord Ramachandra, the husband of Sita. And Prabhupada says, both, right? So what's that? Oh, there's 3 Rams. There's also Parashuram. We heard about Parashuram a few days ago in the Bhagavatam. So there's 3 Rams, and Prabhupada particularly emphasizes Lord Ramachandra and Balaram. And I haven't heard where he like recommends focus on Balaram when you're chanting rather than Ramachandra. I haven't heard something.
Well, to clarify, the devotee who said, well, we can kind of infer that Prabhupada generally tends towards worshiping Balaram more because he installed Krishna Balaram deities like more than Ramasita deities. So maybe that's a little bit more intimate and more, original or supreme or something. I don't know.
Well, there's definitely for each Vishnu Tattva expansion, there's a different flavor, a different taste, and there's some wonderful pastimes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where like with the Korma Brahman, and also I think Murari Gupta, where Lord Chaitanya has some intimate associates and they're worshiping Lord Ram. And Lord Chaitanya convinces them that Krishna is superior. And then like this one, I think it's the Korma Brahmin, he comes back the next day, he's crying. And Lord Chaitanya said, why are you crying? He goes, well, I can't give up worship of Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, whatever you say, I just can't give up the worship of Sitaram. I'm sorry, but I can't. And then Lord Chaitanya's heart's melt. He goes, I'm so inspired by your affection for Lord Ramachandra, like that. So that it gets to be a matter of like personal rasa, personal taste. Thank you for the enlivening question. Malini.
I just often also Prabhupada, when he speak about Ram from the Maha Mantra, is just another name for Krishna. Another reservoir for pleasure, focusing on the pleasure potency of Krishna in a sense. And Prabhupada present that part of the Maha Mantra often that way, that it's just another name of Krishna, Ram, not that it's another person. So it's one and different again. And then about Balaram and Radharani, like I heard Prabhupada describing Balaram non-different than Krishna, but by his color, like that. And also Krishna, Prabhupada say Krishna is the master God, and Balaram is a servant God. And then Radharani is a pleasure potency of Krishna. So they're really, it's all himself, and with different aspects of his pastime and what he wants to enjoy. And he wants to be in a role of servant, a God servant, and that's Balaram. And that's the distinction that he makes. So there is no distinction. Krishna and Balaram, they are both God. And at the same time, there is some nuances. Balaram is white, and Balaram is in the form of servant. Like that, yeah.
Thank you, Malini. Thanks for bringing those nuances from Prabhupada's teachings. Wonderful. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Bol.